And that is why we buy tissues by the case. Jackson, my friend. Yes. Would you do the honors, please? So this is something that we like to do, well, at least I like to do. I don't know if Jackson likes to do it.
She does.
Where part of being what we call a religious scientist, part of being part of this philosophy, is that we get to question everything. And so if there is a fifth Sunday in the month, I try to put that aside for a Q&A session, with the understanding that you are getting Science of Mind as it has filtered through me. That this is my understanding of what the philosopher Ernest Holmes wrote about what he synthesized. He took all the religions he could get his hands on pre-Google, when you actually had to do this thing like in paper books, and you had to read the whole thing because they weren't indexed. You couldn't just do Control F and find the word you were looking for. He had to read all of them and understand all of them and spend some time with all of them. And what he did was boil it down to what are the principles that all the great religions teach, or the religions he could get his hands on at that point. And what he came up with was what we call the science of mind and spirit. Now, mind and spirit, anytime you have the science of, and you want to push it all into one word, the science of, you're going to see the word ology, or the suffix ology at the end of the word. Psyche means mind and spirit. So when I was an undergrad studying spiritual psychology, I was studying science of mind. And now they've come up with this whole new thing they call positive psychology. Guess what? We've been teaching it 100 years. And we got it from people who have been teaching it for thousands of years. So over that amount of time, some wisdom has come up in it. And this is your chance to say, okay, Reverend Kathleen, you said, or I heard anyway, X, Y, and Z. What does that mean? Or this is an issue I'm having in my life right now. What does the science of mind say about it? I am not offering to tell you what God's favorite ice cream is or God's plan for your particular life. Little hint, it's whatever your plan for your life is. But if you have a question about the science of mind, I am happy to attempt to answer it. So I have babbled as long as I can, and you have had some time to come up with questions. If you are online, I invite someone to be looking at Facebook or YouTube. Oh, you guys are so good. And you can just type in your question, and I will try to get to those in between. Try and keep it honest and even. So who has questions? Gary, if you could just speak into the microphone, otherwise the people online will not be able to hear you.
One question I battle with is, who birthed God?
Okay, so I am going to go back to the great philosopher who actually answered this question. And the answer to that question is, a circle has no beginning or end. That comes from Harry Potter, a Ravenclaw, by the way. It's kind of the chicken and egg thing. It's, does the idea birth the thing, or does the thing birth the idea? You're asking for something that, to describe in words, using my rational mind, that which does not fit into words, or a rational mind. Remember, rational comes from the word ratio. In a ratio, you compare two things. In our little brains, we're set up to have comparisons all the time. The way the Judeo-Christian tradition explains that is that Adam and Eve ate from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, took into themselves an understanding of duality, is another way of saying that. So because of that, we understand our minds only deal in duality. That where God came from thing, a heck of a goddess, or something that is beyond our rational mind's ability to understand because it is infinite wholeness. I got to use a lot of words that I like in that one. Thank you. Who else do we have? And that includes those online. So I think we have Nancy, and then I'm going to give people online a chance. So hurry up and type.
So my question goes to those of us that might be coming to the science of mind later on in life. Woo-hoo. And have lived a spiritual journey that has been filled with perceptions and dogma and you wills and you will nots and don't piss off God and all of those, hell, heaven, Catholic faith, purgatory, just in case you're undecided.
Limbo.
So the question itself is, how does one that has believed what one was taught as one grew, how does one let go of those or reconcile those with a very different way of thinking?
Lovingly over time. That is the short answer. All of us walk in these doors, no matter when we show up, with belief systems. All of us walk in these doors with ideas about the world that aren't actually accurate. And yet, the race consciousness, what everybody just knows, that common sense thing that we keep saying exists but don't see much evidence of, that race consciousness, that group mind, holds a whole bunch of beliefs. The two that keep coming to me are, the Catholics have canceled hell. Did you know that? Pope Francis said, never mind. They're not going to do it anymore. They just don't believe in it. They got rid of purgatory and nobody even noticed. So as we move forward, our best minds put forth an idea. And then the rest of us eventually catch up. Have you noticed that some people are still playing in hell? Like here on earth? That some people still honestly are working very hard to stay out of hell, not realizing that they keep putting themselves back in. It's like being in a prison and finding out the door always opened from the inside and was never locked. Another one is the whole thing about Mary Magdalene. Someone somewhere cross-referenced her with a prostitute. And so Mary Magdalene became, in the minds of the church, which was actually the only church at the time in the Western world, it was also most of the governments, there was a mistake made, and Mary Magdalene became known as a prostitute. Well, one of the popes in the 15th century said, no, that's not true. Has anyone noticed yet? Mary Magdalene is finally coming into her own as the 13th disciple, as the disciple that Jesus loved, probably. And yet, I was raised with the idea that she was a prostitute who repented. Me, I was born in 1969. That was corrected back in the 1500s. So obviously, it's with love, but over time. I walked in the door believing in brokenness. I walked in the door, and I'm saying these things so that you might relate to it. I walked in the door believing that I had to earn every cent I ever got and work hard for it. I walked in the door believing that I was unworthy, believing that I had no control over the conditions of my life, believing that because I had student loans that were impressive, it meant I was a bad person because I had debt, because I wasn't rich yet, because my marriage didn't work out. Well, I mean, it worked out by getting a divorce. But all of these things, we have to, as things only come up to be healed. If something is coming up in your life, you're recognizing a belief, or something is just plain old, as you say, pissing you off, that is a sign that there is a belief that is coming up to be healed. We take a look at it, We say yay, nay, this is good data, this is bad data, this works in my life, this doesn't work in my life. And then we decide what to do with it. And one of the tests we apply to any belief, any new belief that we are trying to try on, is if this were true, if it's true that there is no hell, for instance, would I be more free? Would I be more free if I believed that money can come to me effortlessly? Would I be more free if I believed God not only loves me, he likes me and shows up in the world as me to meet itself all over the place? So that's how we come in. And yes, there's great stuff from our paths that got us this far. I don't think I could have handled Science of Mind if I had not done 12 steps first. Many of you have already heard me say I went to something called Codependence Anonymous before I did this. Codependence Anonymous, for those of you who don't know, is also called CODA. It's for those of us who are too independent to use drugs or alcohol to mess up our lives. We do it ourselves. Thank you. Did I answer your question? Okay. Next. Okay, right in the middle in the back. Thank you. This is one of my favorite games, mostly because we used to call it Stump the Minister, and people finally figured out I have no problem saying I don't know, because I probably don't.
So I'm brand new to Science of Mind, but
Yay, welcome.
I was just wondering how the community addresses or what approach you have regarding times of severe stress, dealing with catastrophic illness, this sort of thing. Like, what kind of concepts do you bring forward to help people dealing with these type of challenges?
Okay. Who here has not gone through some severe stress at some point in their life? Me neither. And most of us have at some point gotten sick, even if it's just a cold, because we believed that we're capable of getting sick. What we say is that we are responsible, 100% responsible for everything we have created in our lives. Stop. I did not say to blame for. It's not our fault that something bad happens. Bad things happen to good people. I think it was Harold Kushner who wrote that book years and years ago. Rabbi Harold Kushner. We say that we are responsible in that we have the ability, the power to respond in the way that works best. And so the first thing we do when things go kind of wonky or sideways is pray. Thank you very much. When we pray, what we're doing is getting aligned with who we really are. Not the person who has fallen down, not the person who is physically ill, not the physical body itself, not the person who screwed up their life. God, you've started me and now I just can't stop. Who messed up their life or something in their life. Not the problem or the circumstances, but who we really are. Who we really are is a divine being who is beloved of the beloved. And so if we can come back to that through prayer, great. You have now handled your stress. I promise you, your blood pressure is going down already. When we can't get there, and yes, there are days we cannot get there on our own. I had somebody remind me that God never hands me anything more than I can handle. I said, yes, he does. But that's why he gave me spiritual community as well. Mother Teresa would say, I know that's true, but I wish God didn't trust me so much. I say that's when, everybody reaches that point, and that's when we pick up the phone and ask for help. That's when we call a practitioner. That's when we put in a prayer request. That's when we make an appointment to have a session with a practitioner. We have over a dozen powerful practitioners attached to this center. And there are thousands of them around the world. All of us praying. Every minister must be a practitioner first. So when you are in a time of trouble, when your heart burdened be, we go to prayer, And if we don't get relief from that, we go to a practitioner who goes to prayer for and with us. Because they're not going to buy our story about how awful we are. Little hint, they're not impressed by our drama. I used to work for the public defender's office. Believe me, I have seen some drama. I have worked with the mentally ill. I have worked with abused children. I have seen some stuff. Your little fight with your mom is not going to impress me. I am going to be impressed by the divine spirit that you are and your ability to handle it. That never fails to impress me. And so we take responsibility because we take our power back when we do that. Did that answer your question, or did I miss? Me? Do you want a second bite at the apple? Do you want to try again? Okay. Thank you for making Jackson go like this.
Online, the question is, how do you go about changing your beliefs so it's not just intellectual, but in the body and subconscious?
It absolutely, positively must be in the body and in your feelings. We take our ideas and trace them back to our feelings because that's where the energy is. So we have a couple different processes. If you do what we call the healing service, which we have offered a few times, I'm sure it will be offered again in the future. We do a process called Fear to Faith, which allows us to go within and see not just what happened or what is happening, but what we think it means and how we feel about that, what we hope will happen, what we're terrified will happen. And then there are ways that we call them posture prayers. There are ways of doing prayer that takes it into the body. You'll see that at the end of this talk, there will be a song we do where we take it into our body so that we establish cellular memory. If we cannot get to the emotion that is kind of calcified around the belief, because it's not what happens, it's what we think it means. And what we think it means often is that we are miserable sinners, that we're horrible and broken, right? I mean, everybody here has felt that at some point. What we need to do is go into the feeling, feel it, and then decide if it's an emotional truth or an actual truth. Because things that feel emotionally true aren't always the actual truth. Sometimes it's bad data. I don't actually need that ice cream. My emotions say I do. Anyone else ever eaten their emotions? Or, if somebody says something harsh to me, it doesn't mean I'm a bad person and they don't love me anymore. Or that I should try harder. Or that I'm just I may as well give up. What it means is somebody said something, and I'm making a story up about what it means. And that taps into my emotional truth. And so what we do is we go and unravel that great big ball of emotion and find the internal belief that's kind of at the core of it, and say, with our rational minds and everything else, is that true? And then we use affirmations, we use prayer, we use visioning, we talk to a practitioner. We have all sorts of stuff so that we are sure that we have changed the belief system, which changes our experience because it changes how we react to the world. And eventually, if you keep doing it long enough, it sinks into your subconscious, and that thing that used to happen all the time and mess with your head, you no longer see happening in your life. Reverend Dr. Kathy Hearn was the leader of this philosophy for a very long time. It's like the entire time I was being trained. And one of the things she got asked about a lot was, how do we deal with people who are rabid, fill in the blank of a religion? Fundamentalist of any faith. And she said, I used to have that problem, but once I found the oneness between me and that person, once I found the connection, I never had that happen again where I got attacked for being of my faith and not theirs. It will actually change the conditions in your life if you can change your belief about what it means and heal the painful emotions around it. Who else that hasn't asked a question yet and always wanted? This is the last Q&A I'm doing, guys. Think about that. So if you ever had a question, now's the time. Okay, Carrie, you have another question?
My new book is about misogyny, how it cripples men and women. It's called Venus Envy. It'll be out in...
Venus. That's with a
Venus
V,
and-
guys.
yeah, V.
Okay, let's just be very clear.
Freud be damned. Anyway, but that's another issue. What I've been reading in Neolithic and Paleolithic, about like 6,000 to 10,000 years ago, God was a woman. And there was a radical shift almost into fundamentalism where it was an angry guy who wanted revenge.
Okay.
So how were women written out of spirituality when it was the norm, the creatrix of the universe was feminine? Now it's an angry white guy who wants revenge, war, and death.
Contrary
Discuss.
Contrary to maybe Seamus's belief, I was not around back then. The Gnostics would tell you that the Garden of Eden story is actually a story in which the snake, representing wisdom or Sophia, is the hero of the story. And one of her kids, a god named Yahweh, or for want of a better way of saying his name, had kind of like this play area, and he had some pets in it called humans, Adam and Eve. And he was playing with them in there. And then he'd wander off and play with something else, come back and play with his toys. His mom, Sophia, looked in and said, those are living sentient beings. You cannot limit them. And so I'm going to give them the fruit that you said that they couldn't eat. Basically, she opened the escape hatch and set us free so that we could go on into the world and learn. It's a more painful place to be sometimes, but it will allow us, if we go out into the world and actually live our lives, it will allow us to become the full beings that we are. It is my belief, personally, that to be whole, we must explore both the feminine and the masculine side of our understanding of God and our understanding of ourselves. And when we can get to a place where masculine and feminine are equally honored within our own hearts, then we will see it out in the world. But they each have their own wonderfulness about them. Do we have another question from online? Follow-up question.
Follow-up to the online question is, how long does it usually take? It's taken me years to change certain beliefs where it's in the subconscious and I actually believe it. A lot is coming up for me now, and I'd love it not to take years.
Go off and go back to the old belief. It's kind of like a diet when you're changing the way you eat permanently and you intend to stay there, but then you drive by Dairy Queen and suddenly your car just turns all by itself. It will take as long as it takes, and if you will use these tools, this is just a toolbox that I can offer. If you will do the work, then you are using the tools, you will build a life that is awesome, and you absolutely, positively can heal anything. I remember Reverend Dr. Barbara Waterhouse talking about 1 year her community of practitioners grew 2 kidneys and healed cancer like 3 or 4 times. Half the fun of this philosophy is scaring the bejeebers out of the medical doctors and making them go, wait, what? What just happened? I have seen things that absolutely, positively could not happen. I have seen miracle after miracle after miracle. Not enough time to talk about it today. It will take you deciding and then sticking with it, and every time you fall down, you need to get up and start over again. You start again every time you fall down. You only have to get up one time, and then that's after the last time you fell down. It's kind of like sobriety or changing your eating or any other thing that we are addicted to. We are addicted to our old beliefs. We are addicted to drama. Yes? I mean, we are Americans, after all. We will get up at midnight to go get $50 off of the latest gizmo and go stand in line in a blizzard or whatever. Because I have great job security, because we're all crazy. We're so cute. So it absolutely does work. You have to keep at it. Don't try and do it alone. For the love of all that is holy, don't try and do it alone. One of the things I've learned as a minister and practitioner is my greatest healing comes in the door as a client who has the same issue I didn't realize I had. And by saying things, I mean, I can't tell you how many times my big sister said, Kathleen, did you listen to your talk from last week? Because this thing you're about, you addressed that, right? At which point, because I'm her little sister and not a minister, I say, oh, shut up. Okay, so last question, yes? Okay, so 2 last questions, but we need to use the microphone first. Get the microphone to you. I don't know it doesn't. One of you start talking, because otherwise I will, and you know what happens then.
Okay, so during the time that I've seen you up there, you've mentioned at points your understanding of life after death, and so I'm curious what your personal understanding of it is, and then also, I mean, whether it's nuanced or not from what Ernest Holmes says about it.
That's easy. Ernest Holmes says we don't know. Ernest Holmes says we don't know, and this philosophy is about before death. Are you going to live before you die, or do you think you need to wait until after you're out of this physical body? You guys have all heard me talk about the graveyards are full of people who had near-life experiences. And so even when it's scary, we get up and do our thing and tell our truth and live as big as we can. Now, I personally believe something that Ernest Holmes clearly did not. I believe in reincarnation. I believe that energy is neither created nor destroyed, and therefore that energy must go somewhere. And I believe that I, as a being with a personality, have had lives before, one of them in this town, which is why I think I was called back this time, for whatever that's worth. Could you please hand up the microphone? So right behind you. There you go.
Hi.
Hi.
This is brand new to me.
Cool.
So thank you. So this question maybe, but I grew up as Catholic,
Yay!
and shame and guilt was the name of the game, and now my God is a loving God, but I'm a very loving God. But I'm curious, who is God in this? Who is God to you in this philosophy?
I'm looking at her.
And what about the soul?
The soul in this philosophy is our personalized use of God energy. If you think of God like Play-Doh, we create this world by smooshing the Play-Doh into a certain shape. And for each of us, we have smushed the Play-Doh into a certain shape, and we call that us. Now, that Play-Doh, it's the energy of the smushing. God, I sound so like I don't have 2 master's degrees. The smushing is the energy we put into it to use to hold the Play-Doh in a certain shape. If we let it go, it'll just smush back. It'll unsmush and become usable to put into a different form. The divine being is that which both inhabits this entire world, including every single cell and everything that we are of us, and is greater than that is beyond our understanding. But it's infinite love. It is the universe. It is all good things. Does that help at all? Okay. Very quickly. Man, I thought I could talk for a long time, but you guys keep going.
When I attended the celebration and graduation of our new practitioners, one of the things that was read was, and
The Declaration of Principles?
Yes, and I wonder why that is not read or recited at every service. That really talks about what we believe.
It could be. We have gone through and done an entire service on each one of them. I think is there 12? There's 12 of them or so? Around a dozen. I like a dozen. Each one of them is a statement. Ernest Holmes was asked, what is it we believe? In 25 words or less, good luck. He sat down and wrote out things like, we believe in the power of the one mind, that shared consciousness to control conditions. We believe in the power of the mind to heal the sick. We believe that there is one infinite, unified, divine being, and we are it. We could read that every single time. Honestly, as somebody who wants to get out of here in less than an hour and a half, I don't know that it would go over well. I spent enough time reading the same things over and over again in church. It's called Mass. That if you read it too many times, it starts losing the punch. Kind of like every so often I'll stop us and make us start over again with the affirmation, because we have fallen into, we are here for God. Our purpose is rest, God, nature, love, and something else. And that is why I don't write down my prayers, usually. And now we are going to prayer. This type of prayer that we do is what I talked about at first. We get into alignment with our understanding of God. So whatever it is you do, whether it's close your eyes or just soften your gaze, in order to go within, I invite you into that inner space right now. That place where love is, that place where the energy of life itself is teeming. It might feel like it's in the core of your body. It might suddenly be like you are out in space and all of space and time is just alive and loving and peaceful and filled with joy and ringing with the divine harmonies. We will each experience it in a different way, but each of us is experiencing this thing called life, the thing itself. And it is this thing that is beyond words, that for want of a better word we sometimes call God, that is fully present in, through, and as each and every one of us right now. It is the divine nature to create by speaking our word, by standing witness to the divine idea and calling it into being with the power of our word. And so in this moment, I stand witness to the love and the joy of God. I stand witness to the absolute joy of standing in the question and knowing that the divine within us is rising up as wisdom, is rising up as clarity, and that there are no unaskable questions. I absolutely know and stand witness to the truth of the divine as all of us, and its ability for the truth, the light of truth, to shine into whatever we think is the darkest corner of our soul and simply dissolve back into the no-thingness from which it came. Any false idea, any bad data that somehow got stuck in there, we call this healing. And in the divine light of this truth, I declare a new day of abundance, of wholeness, of grace, of joy beyond anything we have ever experienced, for all of us here and anywhere within the sound of my voice. I know that this is so completely the truth that people driving by are being healed and may never know exactly what happened. And so I bless and celebrate this simple truth of love. I bless and celebrate the simple truth of the oneness of the divine. And I let the natural laws act according to their nature, moving all I have said into being, because it is done unto us according to our belief. I release this word to the law and know it is complete, and so it is.